It's called the Office of Personnel Management, and the guy's name is Scott Kapoor. Scott Kupper. He's a Trump appointee, and he has outlined protected activities by federal employees, and has argued that allowing religious discrimination in the workforce, obviously it's a violation of the law. But he has released a memorandum. He's released a memorandum where basically he's saying, yeah, you guys can have religious conversations now. He says a protected activity includes engaging in conversations regarding religious topics with other employees, including, quote, attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views, as long as those efforts are not harassment. He goes on to say that employees may encourage coworkers to participate in expressions of faith like prayer and study groups, that they might, to the extent that they would already be allowed to encourage coworkers to engage in other personal activities. Employees will also not be restricted in their expressions of faith when interacting with the public. Now, this is a really, really complicated and swampy area. There's a lot of gray here, a lot of gray. One of the things, especially in a corporate business organizational environment, is a power dynamic. And if the boss is inviting you to a Bible study, let's say the boss invites everybody to a Bible study on Tuesday night, outside of work hours, off campus, what are you going to do? Well, you might say no if everybody else says no. If everybody else says yes, you're more likely to feel pressure to go. If your coworkers are always getting together at the pub down the street or the coffee shop up the road to have a time of prayer and study together, maybe they're reading a book, whatever the case is, and you think, well, maybe I should go, maybe I shouldn't go. If they're all going together, you're going to miss out on that social activity, and that there will be undue pressure on you to go. It's a power dynamic that may influence your decision as to whether or not you should go. I mean, if you don't go, well, does that mean the boss will think that I'm not a team player? Will that mean the boss will think that I'm antisocial? I'm up for that promotion next month. I don't want them to think that. So it's a gray and murky area how you're going to go about this kind of thing. I've been in the corporate world. I've had people invite me to different things. I've gone sometimes, other times I haven't, but I can't honestly say that I was ever felt like I was in a position where I needed to, where I felt a pressure to engage. So again, murky, swampy, not sure, but you got to be careful in these situations. But the thing about this memorandum of his that I thought was definitely problematic is that idea that it is okay for us to engage in a conversation about the correctness of the other person's religious beliefs, of the other person's religious views. That I could somehow engage in a conversation that says, oh, listen, I'm afraid your theological stance on this is wrong. I'm afraid that your understanding of this situation is not biblically sound. It's not doctrinally secure. I think that's going to be problematic. That's going to make for a really uncomfortable work environment. And not for nothing, but people like this fella, and Christians in particular, I think Christians forget that we're not the only proselytizing religion. Many religions proselytize. Many religions are willing to have conversations about their faith, about the supremacy of their faith. I 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with a Muslim gentleman who was very kind and very sincere and very lovely. Also didn't have a problem telling me that I was completely in the wrong and that I was not going to find myself in paradise, and that the only way to paradise was through his understanding of his belief. Christians need to remember that when you open this can of worms, you open the can of worms for everybody. But even then, within the Christian church, so many denominations have their own values and moralities and ideals, centered around their interpretations of the gospel, centered around their interpretation of the Bible. But there are many denominations who do not agree with one another. Again, I've had encounters with Pentecostals. I've had encounters with other Anglicans who've told me I'm doing this all wrong. I've had Baptists tell me, because I don't read from the King James Version of the Bible, I'm going to burn in hell. That's verbatim. Well, Ed, you seem like a lovely guy, but because you don't read from the King James Version of the New Testament, you're going to burn in hell. I didn't know that was a requirement. I never read anywhere in the gospel, whether it's King James or not, where Jesus says, and yes, anytime you read this Holy Scriptures, it must include vouchsafe thee, thy, thou, thou. No. If you ever find yourself in a position where you feel the need to correct another person's theological understanding, if you ever find yourself in a position where you feel the need to correct another person's religious views, do not do it with words. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Number one, your words are subject to interpretation. Number two, you got your understanding through an interpretation of something else. Do not do it with words. Do it with loving service. Do it with action. Do it by living out your understanding of your faith. That's the only way. It is the absolute only way you can, quote unquote, correct another's religious views. To do it any other way will cause division and strife. It will hurt people's feelings. It will lead to an argument. There's a reason why we don't talk about, sex, money, religion, and politics at the dinner table. There's a good reason for that. We don't talk about that stuff because we're not capable. Generally speaking, we're not capable of listening. And we don't want to invite strife, and we don't want to invite anger, and we don't want to invite hurt egos and insecurities into a family situation, into a group situation. So if you feel the need to correct somebody's, again, quote unquote, religious views, do it through your loving service. Do it by acting out the commands of Jesus Christ. Do it by living the call that Jesus has placed on all of our lives. Do it by being a bright light in a dark world. Do it by being that light on top of a mountain, on top of the lampstand. Do it by showing them how your understanding leads to your action, which leads to your peace, which leads to your comfort, which leads to your purpose, which leads to your joy. That's how you correct another person's religious views. Now, I know somebody out there might say, well, Ed, you do it all the time. Yes, I do. I absolutely do. It's part of my job as a priest. But here's the crux. You don't have to be here. You can turn this off and never come back. You don't have to come into my church on Sunday mornings or Wednesday afternoons. You don't have to call me for a conversation, for a meeting. You don't have to call me and invite me into a conversation about that stuff. This is completely up to you. Work isn't that way. That's why that power dynamic is so touchy and needs to be treated so sensitively. People need the job. They often don't think that they can go without that job. They often feel like this is the only job. It's not only the only job that they have, but the only job they can get. They don't think that they can, take a week or 2 weeks or a month or 6 months to find another job. And so they hold on to this job. They will do whatever it takes to hold on to this job. It's one thing. It's one thing to be in a kind of relationship where those conversations are had voluntarily, where they're not mandatory or they don't feel mandatory. It's another thing to be in a situation where you may be afraid that not partaking would be damaging to your job, to your time there, to the potential of your career. So if you're at work, if you're in one of those situations where you're with a whole bunch of people and you have to be there and they have to be there and you desperately feel I hear this, I hear this religious view, it needs to be corrected. Don't do it with words. Do it through love. Do it through love. Don't say a word. Be the word. If you don't want to take my word on it, well, think about those beautiful words that are attributed to St. Francis. Share the gospel every day. Use words only when necessary and appropriate. Amen.